Hot news in teachers' strike settlement, public support for education was the best news. Los Angeles. Ring the bell, load the backpacks and start the buses. School is in LA. Unified, that's good news in just about every way. For teachers, staff, students, and parents. Did the union win? On some stuff, did the district win? Same answer, not to rain on the parade, but I do have a question: why the heck did it take 20 months and a 6-day strike to negotiate? That can only be seen as a failure of leadership, all around, and not just by the district and the union. There was no sign on pay, class size, and support staff, including nurses, librarians and counselors. What the union settled for was not significantly better than what the district had offered before the strike began, a strike that cost teachers about 3% of their salaries for missed days. It was hard not to root for teachers on their demand for smaller class size, and they did make modest progress. But it's going to the union had wanted a moratorium on new charter schools, arguing that their growth has further depleted funding for traditional schools. But that was a philistine. Still, the union did score a commitment from the school board to vote on a resolution asking the state to establish a charter school cap. The board has a the union also got an agreement for the creation of 20 community schools, which provide wraparound services for students and their families. And that's potential. But the best thing about the strike, hands down, was the way it galvanized a usually disengaged public. I didn't see that. I thought teachers deserved what they were asking for and more, but I didn't see the financially struggling district, with its rapidly declining enrollment, as the right target. I feared that teachers, the district, and students might all lose in a strike, and that the adults should have been able to forge a deal and together demand more support from Sacramento, which they are now pledging to do. But for days, teachers marched in the rain, beat drums, and dominated the news. After years of classes are so big, it can be really hard to learn, high school student Ezra Bitterman said Tuesday morning on the picket line outside the Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies, one of the district's best schools. My AP World, that's insane. And do not write to it was a family affair on the picket line, with Ezra's sister Annabelle, a former LACES student, joining him. Also there was their, Ezra said his teachers often purchase school supplies, and the school didn't get a much-needed paint job for years. It finally did, but this isn't a contract negotiation, Ezra's playwright father, Shem, wrote to me. It's a historic, okay, but let's think even grander. Why not housing subsidies for teachers and a single-payer health care system that cuts out corporate profit and helps pay for them? Why not free public transit for all students and teachers? As enrollment dwindles in the state, why not convert unneeded schools into workforce housing for teachers and staff? We have a new governor who talks as if he wants to change the world, and while we want him to be fiscally responsible, he's got a budget surplus bigger than the gross national product of most countries. If the existential battle for democracy is to be won, we need to look past the schoolyard and the contract negotiating rooms and consider the big picture. In places where students live in stable middle and upper income areas, schools do well. Where students live in poverty, as 80% of LA. Unified student. What I learned in several weeks at the LA Unified School, in California, busing, white flight, and Proposition 13 teamed up to clobber public schools, and we didn't do much about it. Then came the death. Until somebody smart can invent an economy that works for more people, a full investment in schools is the least we can do. I know this is a rare come-by moment for LA of hand-holding among long feuding parties. But we all know that
raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.